Here's a weird movie Mandela effect about a scene that is very different than most remember. Think back to the Spongebob Squarepants movie from 2004. During the song I'm a Goofy Goober, Spongebob can be seen playing a guitar. Now, if you were a fan of this movie growing up, what does that guitar look like? A lot of people have very similar memories of this one that are now completely incorrect. The most commonly said memory of this guitar is that it is white, V-shaped, and has a double neck. This is the general consensus online. Unfortunately though, all of those details are wrong. The guitar actually looks like a peanut with a GG at the end of its head. This one has been freaking out SpongeBob fans for years. Is this what you remember? Babe is the main character of the Babe and Babe Pig in the City movies. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to visualize Babe the pig in your mind and ask yourself this. Do you remember the pig having a head of hair? I'm sure most of you said no. So tell me, does this look exactly how you remember this lovable pig? Once this was noticed online, every comment essentially boiled down to, no, no way, absolutely not. And I can see why. It's weird and jarring. Why does Babe have hair like this? It's just so strange looking now. It's as if they dyed the hair on Babe's head and brushed it. Is it a wig? Is it real? Has it always been there? I'll let you decide in the comments. Let's take a look at the Vitruvian Man, a drawing of a man facing towards you with arms and legs in different positions. Here's my question for you. In this detailed anatomical drawing, how many arms are shown? Many people remember 3 sets of symmetrical arms, but this drawing in fact only has 2 sets of arms. Some believe the empty space on the left and right between the arms and legs was supposedly where that extra set of arms were, but as of now, they've never existed. Others believe that the 3rd set of arms were sticking straight up in the air. There are a few different variations of this supposed memory, but in all cases, there were 3 sets of arms, not 2. Do you remember there being more than this, or is this exactly what you remember? Let's talk about the Nintendo Wii and its launch title Wii Sports. This simple packing game made a big splash back in 2006. It contained tennis, baseball, bowling, golf, and boxing. It was extremely easy to pick up and play, which made it popular with most demographics. There wasn't a lot of depth to these games, but it was great for parties and families to have a good laugh. By the end of the Wii's life cycle, it sold over 101 million units, meaning a ton of people on this earth have played Wii Sports. Now that you're up to date with Wii Sports, let's talk about its Mandela Effect. When you would win one of these games, a quick replay of what happened would play, and then a pop-up would appear saying and showing the words, "You win." Does that sound familiar to you? Because if it does, then you have been affected by the Mandela Effect. It apparently never actually says, "You win." It shows the text on screen, but no voice appears. Nintendo has always taken a very minimal approach to voice acting in their games. While the Xbox and PlayStation consoles had fully voice-acted adventures, Nintendo typically cut costs by not including voice actors of any kind, or as minimal as possible in their titles. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, you didn't get full voice lines, especially during the Wii console generation. But in Wii Sports, a male voice actor does say lines during matches. In fact, you can watch 5.5-minute compilations of all the random lines and words that he says. But he never once says, "You win." It just doesn't exist. It apparently never existed, and yet so many people remember this line. I even checked out the sequels to Wii Sports, both Wii Sports Resort and Wii Sports Club, and guess what? It's in neither of them as well. So where did this line come from, and why do so many people associate it with Wii Sports? Let's talk about the Grinch. Every year around this time, I get comments from people telling me to cover this one. So it's finally time to cover it. Let's do it. What is the name of this Christmas book and movie, retelling the story of the Grinch? Is it The Grinch Who Stole Christmas? Or is it How the Grinch Stole Christmas? This is one of those that didn't necessarily affect me, but there are so many cases of people online who are affected by this that it can't possibly be ignored. I mean, there are hundreds if not thousands of comments and posts out there from people who remember this differently than it is now. The correct answer is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I want to hear your thoughts on this because so many people remember this differently, and yet all of those people remember it in the exact same way. This is what I find so weird about all of this. I have a question for you. Which of these logos is the official Starbucks logo? Is it the one on the left with a full crown, or is it the one on the right with a star on its crown? I'm sure most of you have seen this logo 1,000 times. This should be incredibly easy to pick from, right? This Mandela Effect has been troubling a lot of people recently, so let's figure it out once and for all. This is the correct Starbucks logo. I gotta be honest with you, this one got me. The star on top looks so weird and so out of place. And looking at the history of the Starbucks logo doesn't ease my mind either. Since 1987, the mermaid on the Starbucks logo has had that star on her crown. It has never been removed or altered. This one really got me. What about you? This next Mandela Effect continues the idea of being really troubling for those affected. If you don't play video games, this one's probably not going to affect you. But if you do play video games and you've played this specific game, this might hit you hard. Up next, we're talking about Mario Kart, the legendary arcade-style racing game that people have enjoyed for decades. And today, specifically, the Nintendo 64 version, Mario Kart 64. This Mandela Effect has to do with the insanely unforgiving track, Rainbow Road. The difficulty comes from its trackless edges and hairpin turns. So tell me, did Mario Kart 64's version of Rainbow Road have rails along the sides? Yes or no? The Mandela Effect here is that so many people remember Mario Kart 64's Rainbow Road not having rails, thus making it a much tougher race. But apparently it's always had rails? The Super Nintendo version of Mario Kart's Rainbow Road did not have rails, but apparently the N64 one did. This seems like an open and shut case of potentially mixing up the games, but numerous people online claim that they have only played the Nintendo 64 version. So why would they know what's in the older version of Mario Kart that they've never played? This Mandela Effect has to do with the incredibly popular song called The Bare Necessities. I'm going to read a very specific verse, and I want you to tell me what goes in the blank. Wherever I wander, wherever I roam, I couldn't be blank of my big home. Is it fonder or is it found? The lyrics that pop up when you Google search the Bare Necessity lyrics, it says fonder, so that must be right. Nope. If you watch the movie today, it now says found. Let's watch the clip and you can judge for yourself.
I couldn't be found of my big home. I couldn't be found of my big home.
Help me out, hardcore and casual Disney fans. What did you think about this change? Did that wording throw you off as much as it did me? Because for me, found doesn't make any sense. It's a there's a snake in my boots all over again. Another Disney classic is 1992's Aladdin. This movie takes place in the nondescript Middle Eastern country of Agrabah. Well, here is the weird and confusing Mandela Effect regarding that movie. What country is the Aladdin story now historically based in? Is it Egypt, China, Iraq, or Turkey? One would believe this movie is based on a classic Arabic story, or a folktale like Arabian Nights or The Thief of Baghdad. Well, you'd be surprised to learn that this isn't the case anymore. Aladdin is now originally based in China, and was originally envisioned to have a full Chinese cast of characters, including 2 genies. I'm including this on my list because I found a thread of people freaking out about this seemingly changed historical fact. Is this what you remember of Aladdin's origins? Or was Disney your first and only introduction to this ancient story? Let me hear about it in the comments below. Let's talk about a classic guitar brand founded in 1890 that is known all over the world. How is it spelled? Squire or Squire? Anyone out there who has owned a guitar or a first-time amp has seen this before. So what do you remember? Both sound the same, but it turns out that the spelling of Squire is actually this one. That's the correct spelling. This Mandela Effect has been extremely popular lately, as it's affected so many people online. Are you one of those affected? Or have you always known that Squire was spelled like this? I've tested this on a bunch of different friends, and every single one of them has gotten it wrong, which is pretty rare for a Mandela Effect. Usually it'll be 40-60 or 60-40, sometimes 50-50, but this one, from what I've seen online, as well as everyone I've talked to, I'm clocking at 100% for this one, which is pretty compelling. So I'd love to hear what you think. Here's something that I find really cool about the Mandela Effect. Once a topic has been affected by it, people tend to look closer into whatever that topic is. And when things are given a little more scrutiny, oftentimes even more Mandela Effects are discovered within it. And this next one is no different. I've covered the Great Pyramids of Giza twice before in previous videos, so why not cover it a third time? When you think of the pyramids, what do you see? Mummies, tombs, pharaohs. What about hieroglyphs? Hieroglyphics written all across the walls. Well, it turns out there are no hieroglyphs in any of the pyramids of Giza. That's right, there are no hieroglyphs anywhere in the pyramids of Giza. There are in fact no hieroglyphs, no writings, no treasures, and no mummies ever found in the pyramids of Giza. This has apparently always been the case. What's next? There's 4 pyramids of Giza, there's 5 pyramids? Who knows? Can't wait to find out though. The year is 1973, and the movie The Exorcist just released. Audiences across the nation are terrified. The cussing, the gore, the special effects, and story was incredibly scary for its time, so much so that it launched an entirely new genre of horror movies. The Exorcist was burnt into the zeitgeist of American cinema, and has since been called one of the scariest movies of all time. If you watch it nowadays, I would argue that it's not quite as scary as a lot of those people remember, but times have changed, we've seen a lot of scary movies since. So regardless of how you feel about this movie, if you have seen it, I have a Mandela Effect for you. Remember poor Reagan, tied to the bed and possessed? Did Reagan have a feeding tube in her nose during The Exorcist? Yes or no? Well, it turns out in a lot of scenes, she actually did. How convenient that it disappeared before her head spun around. Otherwise, that'd be an especially awkward scene. Many people don't remember this feeding tube, but there it is. What do you think? Do you remember this feeding tube from The Exorcist, or is this another case of the Mandela Effect? Let's talk about the Flintstones. Or are they called the Flintstones? Which one sounds right to you? If you're old enough to have grown up with these Hanna-Barbera cartoon characters, this should be easy, right? If you picked the Flintstones, then you're remembering it correctly. The official title is indeed the Flintstones, spelled with an extra T. This is one of the earliest examples of the Mandela Effect, where a large group of people remember something differently than how it is today. Apparently the reason it's spelled this way is a play on the Stone Age idea of flint, or flintstone, which is a naturally occurring mineral quartz that was used by our ancestors as spears, axes, and most importantly to create fire. It's honestly a brilliant name for a TV show about the Stone Age, but why do so many people remember this incorrectly? Well, that's the Mandela Effect for you. Sometimes things seem to change, without any discernible reason or rationale. Why do these changes happen? What's causing them? And why are they seemingly so random? Well, you'll just have to watch my series, What Caused the Mandela Effect, to find out. Let's kick things off with the weirdest Wizard of Oz Mandela Effect out there. Everyone remembers the Tin Man carrying an axe. Everyone remembers Dorothy carrying a basket and Toto. Even the Cowardly Lion held onto his tail when he was afraid. So what was the Scarecrow holding onto? Did the Scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz carry a pistol? Does that sound right? Yes or no? As it turns out, yes, the Scarecrow carried a pistol in the Wizard of Oz. In this magical and wondrous place, the brainless Scarecrow walked around carrying a pistol. What a terrifying combination. This specific Mandela Effect has blown a lot of minds online, so what about you? But let's assume you've heard of this one before. Well, did you know that the Scarecrow wasn't the only character in the Wizard of Oz who carried a weapon? In fact, when Dorothy arrives in Oz and is greeted by a song and parade celebrating that the Wicked Witch is dead, the Munchkin army that marches by, they're all holding rifles with bayonets at the end. The leader of the army is brandishing a giant sword. Oz probably holds some darker secrets that are better left hidden. Our next Mandela Effect has to do with a series of classic paintings by Cassius Marcellus Coolidge between 1894 and 1910. These paintings are known as Dogs Playing Poker. I'm sure even the most casual art fan will recognize these paintings because they have been displayed in the backgrounds of numerous movies, shows, and quite a few bars. Here is the Dogs Playing Poker Mandela Effect. Did any of the dogs ever wear a transparent green visor? You know, this kind of hat. Yes or no? Despite the fact that a ton of people fondly remember these paintings of realistic dogs playing poker, no such painting exists with a dog wearing a transparent green visor. What amazes me most is that I can see the painting in my mind. I'm sure quite a lot of you can as well. So where did we get this visual from? I tried digging deeper into this case and I haven't found anything yet. We all know these paintings were very popular and I'm sure quite a few spin-offs and variations exist, but even then I'm still unable to locate a painting with a green poker visor. So if anyone has any idea where this comes from, please leave it in the comments below. Together, we can hopefully solve this mystery. For our second Mandela Effect, I'm going to be talking about the 1983 movie Risky Business. Specifically, a much beloved and often recreated scene starring Tom Cruise. In this famous scene, Tom Cruise is singing along with a song as he slides into frame. In this famous moment, what is he wearing? Visualize the scene in your head and come up with an answer. Is it a white shirt or is it a pink shirt with stripes? Well, get this. Now, it's actually a pink shirt with stripes. And not only is it a pink shirt with stripes, what else do you remember him wearing during this scene? Did Tom Cruise have sunglasses on during that scene or not? Well, the answer now is no. He never wore sunglasses during that scene. The creepiest movie Mandela Effects always seem to have multiple aspects missing. This time, it's the different shirt and the missing sunglasses. If you did remember the classic look, you aren't alone. Residue of this Mandela Effect is all over the internet if you Google this topic. From parody ads and commercials, to The Simpsons, to even Scrubs reenacting the scene. This effect is one of the most compelling and mysterious of the movie Mandela Effects. So please, let me hear all of your thoughts about this in the comments below. Let's talk about Michelangelo's David. This statue is a Renaissance masterpiece which depicts the biblical hero, David. The Mandela effect regarding the David statue is a detail that many online claim has changed. It's specifically in regards to his eyes. What people seem to remember is that David had normal-shaped pupils, but as of now, that isn't the case. As of right now, David actually has heart-shaped pupils. Does this look right to you? Some have claimed it's a representation of specular highlights in his eyes. Others have claimed it's a heart to represent love, but honestly no one knows. What makes this so fascinating is that this famous statue has been studied for over 500 years. Amazingly enough, this detail has seemingly never been noticed before. What's fascinating is that the Mandela effect changes to famous statues isn't a new phenomena. Just like the thinker, David has seemingly shifted over time. Or at least that's how many people remember it. As of now, there is no explanation regarding the reason the pupils are heart-shaped. It's not even a common trend seen in other statues, let alone other works of Michelangelo. Let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. The Hunger Games was a movie released in 2012 and was based off the 2008 book of the same name. The aspect of the film we're talking about today is the Battle Royale competition. A bunch of people usually spread out over a large map fighting to the death until there's only one person remaining. Well, our Hunger Games Mandela effect has to do with the one scene right before the Hunger Games start. Do you remember when all the participants are standing on their own individual platforms, waiting for the games to start? Do you remember the scene when someone stepped off of the platform early and blew up? Well, if you do remember that, apparently that scene never happened and doesn't exist. Now, I saw the Hunger Games back in the day, and this sounds familiar, but I'm more concerned with what you remember. Some have speculated online that this scene was in a parody movie called The Starving Games, but I've never seen or heard of that movie before, so that doesn't really explain why I have a memory of someone exploding in the Hunger Games movie. Another explanation is that the explosion may have been in the book, but not in the movie. Well, I don't have a copy of the book and I've never read it before, so that doesn't really explain it either. So what do you think? Is this just a weird, seemingly implanted memory, or do you remember this scene as well? It seems like we're heading back into the woods with this new Mandela effect. In a previous video, I talked about how the Great Smoky Mountains is now missing an E. But this time we're talking about a different Smokey. This time we're talking about Smokey Bear. And yes, I know that's another Mandela effect in and of itself. Plenty of people remember Smokey the Bear, but now it's simply Smokey Bear. But enough with the tangents and history lessons. Does Smokey Bear wear suspenders? Yes or no? He's standing up straight with a park ranger hat on, a shovel in one hand, and he's pointing at you. In this visual, do you see suspenders or not? Well, now he doesn't wear suspenders, and never has. It's fascinating if you're one of us that remembers the suspenders. Let me guess, they were red, right? It's exactly what I remember. Upon doing my research for this one, I found a few pieces of residue regarding this Mandela effect. Here are pictures that I found showing that I am not alone in remembering these suspenders. How is it possible that so many of us remember this small little detail that seemingly never existed? It's troubling to say the least. So, as always, let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. Reading through the thoughts and memories of different commenters is always my favorite part of these videos. The Birds is a 1963 movie by Alfred Hitchcock. It was a horror mystery that focused on the absurd and scary concept of unexplained violent bird attacks on people. If you watch the movie today, it's pretty funny, but back in 1963, this terrorized people. It made people legitimately nervous around birds. So why do I bring this up? There seems to be a large group of people that remember The Birds being a black and white movie, but it turns out that The Birds was always a color movie. In fact, many people seem to believe that this movie was originally black and white and was later colorized. What's interesting is that this belief even existed back then. In fact, the lead actress of The Birds, Tippi Hedren, claimed in interviews that so many people would tell her how happy they were that they finally colorized the movie, and she'd always have to break the news to them saying, "It's always been in color." Some people have speculated this weird belief came from the fact that so many people had black and white TVs at the time, but that doesn't explain why people that saw it in movie theaters would remember it being in black and white when it was shown in color. It's another weird example of the Mandela effect, and it goes to show that the effect has been around a lot longer than people realize. I wonder how far back it actually goes. Up next is a Mandela effect that I've never covered on All Time. It's the whole Judge Judy has never used her gavel in any of the episodes of her courtroom drama. When I first heard of this one seemed so absurd to me, I couldn't believe it. At the time it became popular, I really enjoyed looking into it, and reading about it, and watching the hilarious reactions to it. But I couldn't give my stamp of approval until I had watched every episode of Judge Judy to confirm it or deny it. Thankfully, enough people took on the challenge, and eventually it was discovered that Judge Judy did indeed use her gavel on multiple occasions.
Parties are excused.
Good. Dismiss.
Why you got here?
Hey,
Should have put one on you.
listen to me. I can't hear everybody at the same time.
Had 24-hour oxygen.
Did you hear this?
My sister has never done anything
Did
you
for
hear
my
this?
mother.
I gave
watch
my whole
this.
entire life.
I don't want to use it.
As I look through all these videos of her using the gavel, the most hilarious one comes from season 1, where she slams her gavel down in an episode and says this.
No, that's not my signature.
It's not your signature.
I forged that.
Hey, listen,
mine.
I don't like to use this thing. It's a recent innovation of mine
want you
because I
using
can't keep
it,
people
Yana.
quiet.
What about electric cars? This seems like a new enough concept. Well, what if I told you that it's actually really, really old? In fact, the first electric car debuted all the way back in 1890 in the United States. Not only that, apparently electric cars from a bunch of different automakers popped up all across the country. New York City even had an entire fleet of 60 electric taxis. By the year 1900, electric cars accounted for 1/3 of all vehicles on the road in the United States. And over the next 10 years, the sales of electric cars kept growing. This definitely sounds like the history you learned growing up, right? Electricity didn't have all the issues that steam or gas cars did. They were easy to drive with no smelly pollutant. Apparently, the electric car over 100 years ago was extremely popular and even led to the first hybrid car. That's right, both gas and electric back in 1899. 1899 was the first hybrid electric gasoline-powered car. To blow your mind even more, even Edison believed that electric cars were the superior technology. But what if I told you that history was a little different now? It was ultimately Henry Ford's mass-produced cheaper Model T car that seemingly killed the electric car, and thus the considerably more toxic and inefficient gas-powered cars became the standard. It all came down to price. When you visit the Statue of Liberty, can you go up into the torch? What I learned when I was younger was that you were always able to go into the head of the Statue of Liberty and the torch. I heard that it was shut down for a while in the 1980s for refurbishment and repairs, but after that was finished, you could still visit the torch. Only after the attacks in 2001 were you not allowed up there anymore. Now, perhaps everything I was taught was wrong, and it's always been wrong, but that's what I've always known and have been taught. The truth as it is now is that not since 1916 could you go up into the torch. Does that sound strange to anyone? Now, to bring everything together, the reason you can't go inside of it is because of the structural damage caused by the Black Tom explosion. Another detail I find interesting is the belief that it was closed in the 1980s for simple refurbishment and repairs, to fix the years and years of wear and tear. That isn't actually what it was. It was once again to work on the damage caused by the explosion. Another one where I'm like, what? Again, why did no one ever talk about the Black Tom explosion if it's what caused those problems? What's interesting for this Mandela Effect is that you can find residue all over the internet of people remembering how they visited the torch. They went there as a kid, they went there as an adult, they went there with their grandparents. Recounts of people's experiences can be found all over the internet if you want to look further into this. But for now, I'll leave it at that. The word smallpox probably doesn't mean much to younger people today. It's an old disease that was completely eradicated by 1980, thanks to a vaccine created in 1796. But did you know that it was one of the deadliest viruses to ever spread throughout humanity? Over 500 million recorded deaths, and that's since we've been record keeping. It's probably considerably more than that. In fact, one epidemic in Japan between 735 and 737 was believed to have killed off an entire third of their population. Smallpox is no joke. They speculate that smallpox first made the jump to humans over 3,000 years ago, as there are even Egyptian mummies who died of smallpox. But as history and the Mandela Effect go, obviously something has to change. As I mentioned earlier, the smallpox vaccine was created in 1796. Except now it was being used 30 plus years earlier when George Washington and Congress carried out a mass vaccination campaign in the Continental Army that reduced the mortality from smallpox to less than 2%, from what was 50%. Let's say 2 people got it, 1 person was pretty much guaranteed to die, to now being 50 people could get it and only 1 person would die. It was this overwhelming massive success that somehow the history books forgot to mention until now. And get this, inoculations and vaccines for smallpox date back somehow even further than that. Examples range from the early 1700s all the way back to the 1500s in China. Let's talk about Dwayne Johnson, aka The Rock, the former wrestler and now actor that is somehow cast in everything. Everything from the Fast and Furious franchise, to Disney's animated Moana, to the latest Disney ride-turned-movie Jungle Cruise. The reason I bring him up is because of his famous wrestling quote from back in the day. Can you smell what The Rock is cooking? I never watched wrestling growing up, but even I had heard of this quote. So come to find out, that isn't actually what he says. In fact, he never said, can you smell what The Rock is cooking? His quote is actually, if you smell what The Rock is cooking. If, not can. This might seem like a small grammatical difference, but it fundamentally changes the meaning of the quote. Not only are there multiple threads online discussing this weird change, but numerous comments from people all over YouTube remembering this quote being can, not if. This misspoken and misquoted line isn't just limited to audio and video clips. It's quoted on t-shirts, media pieces about The Rock, and dozens of articles. Is it possible that everyone is wrong and this is just a mistake that keeps being repeated? Or is this another example of the Mandela Effect? In my research for this, I found videos saying can in the title, but when you watch it, he says if. I even looked up his wrestling theme song to see what it says, and it says, if you smell what The Rock is cooking. So what do you remember? Has it always been, if you smell what The Rock is cooking, or has something changed? I'm curious to hear which one you remember. Starting off today's video is the classic Christmas song, I'll Be Home for Christmas. The lyrics for the song go as follows. I'll be home for Christmas, you can blank on me. What goes in the blank? Is it you can count on me? Or is it you can plan on me? If you're like so many of us, you probably said you can count on me, but that is now apparently wrong and has always been wrong. It's you can plan on me. Tell me, is this what you remember? This Mandela Effect has blown away everyone, and I mean everyone. So what about the dozens and dozens of versions of this song? Surely one of them says count, right? Well, let's check them out. What about Bing Crosby?
You can plan.
Michael Bublé.
You can plan.
Frank Sinatra.
You can plan.
Elvis.
You can plan.
Dean Martin.
You can plan.
Perry Como.
You can plan.
If the lyric "You Can Count on Me" exists, which it very well might, it's in none of the classic and well-known versions of this song. Stanley Kubrick is one of the greatest filmmaking visionaries in history, creating such masterpieces as The Shining, A Clockwork Orange, and Eyes Wide Shut. But today we're talking about his 1968 classic, 2001: A Space Odyssey. This beyond impressive wallpaper generator of a film has inspired pretty much every science fiction movie since. 2001: A Space Odyssey is specifically known for how sparingly it uses dialogue. In fact, during its 142-minute runtime, it has less than 40 minutes of dialogue. But what dialogue the movie does have is some of the most memorable. Like when HAL 9000 says, "This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it." Or Dave pleading with HAL, "Open the pod bay doors, HAL." And HAL 9000 responding by saying, "I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that." Or, probably the most well-known quote from HAL 9000 saying, "Good morning, Dave." Except, here's the thing. As it is now, HAL 9000 never actually said that line. Not once in the movie, or in any trailer, or in any of the cut scenes. Nowhere. So how is this possible? What happened to this line? Why do so many people remember and quote this line when it apparently never existed? These are questions I don't know the answer to, so I'd like to hear what you think. Is this a Mandela Effect? Or is this quote just some incorrect and misremembered phrase repeated over and over worldwide? As always, let me hear your thoughts below. This Mandela Effect is another strange one. Often Mandela effects based around spelling are tossed aside by skeptics as being easy mistakes. But perhaps if you're still watching, this might leave you scratching your head. What is the correct spelling for this type of apple? Is it Macintosh without an A? Or is it Macintosh with an A? It's easy to jump to Macintosh with an A because of the famous computer brand. But as of now, the name of the fruit is spelled M-C-I-N-T-O-S-H, without an A. Weird, right? Well, it gets weirder. Not only do we have plenty of residue to show that this apple spelling used to have an A in it, an entire computer company was built off of its spelling. Apple's most famous computers are called Macintosh with an A. That spelling of Macintosh even continued with their line of extremely popular MacBooks with an A. Could you imagine today if a brand new company came out called Apple and they introduced their brand of computers called Macintosh, but with the name misspelled? The internet would lose its collective mind. It would be filled with non-stop jokes, memes, and articles about how Apple can't spell. But that's not all. The most damning piece of evidence is that the creator of this type of apple is John Macintosh with an A. He literally bred this apple into existence, and he named it after his last name. But we're to believe he misspelled it? What? No way. I feel like this Mandela Effect is yet another example of how a change in history can have lasting effects. So as always, let me hear what you think about this in the comments below. Let's kick off today's video with a Mandela Effect regarding the human body. Humanity understands the inner workings of the human body, thanks to all of the medical professionals who have studied the human body for hundreds and hundreds of years. What would you think if I told you that there is a new organ inside of your body that was just recently discovered? If you heard this, I'm sure some of you would think, how's that possible? Or possibly, if that's true, then that new organ must be pretty small and very well hidden to have gone undetected for so long. Well, surprise, surprise, that new organ is real, and it isn't tiny, and it isn't hidden, it's huge. In fact, so huge that it is the largest organ in the human body. It's called the interstitium, a previously unknown organ and one of the biggest organs in the human body. It's a massive network of dense connective tissue and fluid-filled compartments throughout the entire body. According to scientists, this is now a full-fledged organ that somehow no one had ever stumbled upon before. This next fact completely blew my mind. The interstitium is actually bigger than your skin, which has forever held the title of the largest organ in your body. It is absolutely incredible to me how no one had ever noticed or discovered this before. So what do you think? Somehow we all believe that our skin was the largest organ in our body, and now it turns out that that isn't true. There has apparently always been another organ that's even bigger. There are a ton of articles about this as well as medical papers on this if you want to read more. It's a really fascinating thing to look at. Let me hear all of your thoughts on this crazy and mind-blowing change in the comments below. Froot Loops is an unsurprisingly fruit-flavored breakfast cereal with a mascot named Toucan Sam. Produced by Kellogg's and sold in a variety of countries, Froot Loops was first introduced in 1963. Now that we're caught up with the brand, let's talk about this classic Mandela Effect surrounding it. How do you spell Froot Loops? Is it F-R-U-I-T loops? Or is it F-R-O-O-T loops? What'd you pick? Did you pick Froot Loops as in F-R-U-I-T? If you did, you are incorrect. The correct answer is actually F-R-O-O-T, Froot Loops. This classic Mandela Effect has troubled many, and was one of the original flip-flops. And what I mean by flip-flops is that the correct answer has supposedly flipped back and forth between the two. Apparently the spelling of Froot Loops has never changed, but forum posts and videos online can be found where the consensus opinion has. It seems different groups of people in the past have all agreed on different spellings at different times. So how is this possible when the spelling hasn't changed? Well, that's the Mandela Effect for you. Something that everyone knows one day can be slightly or totally different the next. As for Froot Loops, what do you remember? Was it always fruit with 2 O's, or has something changed? Even if you do a simple Google search for the terms Froot Loops spelling can wield some incredible stuff. People on there have asked questions like, why is Froot Loops spelled wrong? And did Froot Loops change their name? As one of the original Mandela Effects, this one has been researched to death and the results are always the same. Officially, nothing has changed. But something has definitely changed. October 30th, 1938, the day before Halloween. Famed writer George Orson Welles performed the terrifying radio adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel, The War of the Worlds. This Halloween special radio broadcast was a fictional news report of aliens violently invading Earth. Now, here is the Mandela Effect for those of you who learned about this in school. What was the effect of this radio broadcast? Did it cause mass panic across the country? Or did it cause very little panic across the country? If you're like me, you remember learning that this day before Halloween radio broadcast caused major panic across the country. Police were called, workers left what they were doing to hide, people jumped off buildings, and emergency services were overwhelmed with calls. This was taught to us in school to highlight the power the media has over the population, and how it must be used responsibly. Or at least that's what I took away from it. As it turns out now, there was never a major panic. No one died, no one jumped, nothing of the sort happened. In fact, Adolf Hitler himself joined in on the mass hysteria and publicity and used it as an example of, quote, evidence of the decadence and corrupt condition of democracy. Very weird. Now, some theorize that the reports came out to artificially sell newspapers. Others say it was never a big deal to begin with. And the rest of us are just left scratching our heads. So what do you remember learning about? Or, if you happen to be old enough, what do you remember about this broadcast? Do you remember learning that the special Halloween radio broadcast of the War of the Worlds caused mass panic? Or has the Mandela Effect struck again? Let me know in the comments below. Al Capone, also known by the nickname Scarface, is one of America's most famous gangsters back during the Prohibition era. This rich and powerful businessman, as he called himself, was also the boss of the Chicago Outfit, aka the Chicago Mob. Al Capone reigned supreme for 7 long years before the US government finally took him down. It wasn't for his crimes of extortion, murder, robbery, or bootlegging that took him down. It was tax evasion. In 1931, Al Capone was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in prison, but he was only imprisoned for 8 years. Here is where the Mandela Effect comes in. What happened to Al Capone? It's a widely known fact today that when he entered prison, he had syphilis, which remained untreated for the vast majority of his stay. By the end of his life, he was actually diagnosed as having the mental age of a 12-year-old. So tell me, where did Al Capone die? Was it in Alcatraz prison, or was it in his home in Florida? I am one of the many people who were taught that Al Capone had died in prison. Well, it turns out, after 8 years of incarceration, he was paroled in 1939, and he actually lived on for 8 more years after his prison sentence. What did you remember? And get this, Al Capone spent his last years of his life at his mansion in Palm Island, Florida, spending time with his wife and grandchildren. Then, because of complications of syphilis, he eventually suffered, yet survived a stroke, but then not long after, he died of cardiac arrest. This timeline is drastically different than the one that I remember learning about and studying growing up. So what about you? Do you remember Al Capone dying in prison, or dying 8 years later surrounded by his family and loved ones? I recently went up to a mountain casino in North Carolina, and as I traveled through these mountains, I noticed something on multiple signs that felt deeply wrong to me. And that is the spelling of Smokey in the Smoky Mountains. Which is the correct spelling? With an E or without? Well, the correct answer is without an E. I've always known these mountains as being spelled with an E, but apparently now they don't have one. But it gets weirder. Check out these photos that we captured of Smoky Mountain signs. All of them are missing an E, except for this one particular collection of signs. This photo shows, miraculously, a little bit of residue. Both signs on top are spelled Smokey without an E. But the third time it's mentioned is the hand-drawn sign, and that one has an E in it. Now to me, this is beyond fascinating, so follow along. Why would someone misspell the mountain that their shop is literally built on top of? How erroneous and absent-minded would one person have to be to buy land on the Smoky Mountain, open up a shop, include Smokey in the title of your business, and lastly, place your sign under 2 quote-unquote correct spellings of Smokey that contradict yours? It simply doesn't make any sense. Has anyone ever told this owner before? The next time I'm up there, I'm going to pull over and I'm going to ask the owner because I'm super curious to hear what he or she has to say. So tell me in the comments below, is this a Mandela Effect for you as well? What are your thoughts on this? Lastly, is there something we aren't quite understanding about the Mandela Effect? Specifically regarding hand-painted signs versus machine-made signs and logos. Mysteries through and through. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about the gaming giant Nintendo. Specifically regarding the Nintendo Entertainment System launch title, Super Mario Bros. This beloved video game was released in 1985 in Japan and North America, and in 1987 Europe and Australia. Super Mario Bros. Is an instant classic whom many attribute to the revival of video games after the 1983 video game crash. Super Mario Bros. Went on to sell a total of 40 million copies, and over the next few decades, Mario became a billion-dollar franchise for Nintendo. All of this to say, Super Mario Bros. Was insanely popular. So much so, this Mandela Effect should affect quite a few of you. So here's my question. In the original Super Mario Bros., when you reach the end of a world, at least for the first 7 times, you're greeted by Toad saying, "Thank you, Mario, but blank, princess is in another castle." Fill in that blank. What goes there? Since tens of millions of people have played this should be an easy answer. Many online seem to remember it as the. Some out there seem to remember it as your. But the accurate phrase is actually, "Thank you, Mario, but our princess is in another castle." Is that what you remember? And if not, which did you remember? There's a lot of debate online about which one came first. Maybe it was changed, maybe it was based off memes, what could have changed it, I don't remember this, I do, back and forth. All kinds of arguing, all kinds of drama. I'm on team the princess, but I'm not as passionate about this as some are online. I mean, I loved playing Mario growing up, but I was more of a Legend of Zelda and Metroid kid. Also, side note, have any of you ever noticed how it looks like Toad is flipping you off in the final scene? How rude. Here is a series of classic Mandela effects I've never talked about before, but recently I've been asked to look into it, so here we go. Let's talk about the A-Team. The A-Team was a popular TV show that ran from 1983 to 1987. This TV series is no stranger to the Mandela Effect. Having not only multiple effects of its own, it's also been referenced in other unrelated Mandela effects in recent media, such as the Skechers commercial starring Mr. T talking about how Skechers doesn't have a T in its name. The first A-Team Mandela Effect is in regards to one of the four main characters. Many people remember this character as Mad Dog Murdoch, but in actuality, it's Howling Mad Murdoch, and apparently, it always has been. Does that sound right to you? Both of those names have the word mad in them, but Howling and Dog, they're pretty different. Next up is the color of the 1983 GMC Vandura van the A-Team drove. If you know the show, you can probably visualize the colors in your mind. Many people remember it as an all-black van with a red line going across it. Does that sound about right to you? Well, it shouldn't. As of now, the bottom part is black, the red line is still there, but the top part of the van is gray. This Mandela effect has troubled so many. Next up is the famous line from Mr. T, "I pity the fool." A lot of people seem to remember BA saying this line in the A-Team, but that is actually not the case. Out of the 98 episodes of the A-Team, Mr. T never actually said that phrase. It was said in a lot of other things, such as interviews and in commercials, but it was never said in the A-Team. I don't know if that's memories getting crossed here and there, or if that's an actual legitimate Mandela effect, but as always, I throw these out there so that you can decide. Regardless, it's interesting to say the least. The Scream is a beautiful composition created by the Norwegian artist Edvard Munch in 1893. Now, this piece was brought to my attention by multiple commenters claiming that something had changed about this incredibly iconic work of art. So let's take a look at it. Are there any details here that you don't remember being here? I noticed something right away, and upon doing more research, it turns out that a lot of people online don't remember ever seeing this gold bracelet on the wrist of the screaming figure. What do you think? So here's an interesting detail. Edvard Munch created at least 5 versions of the Scream. The first in 1893, the second in 1895, the third in 1910, which many art historians believe is a replica painting Edvard made after selling the original 1893 version. The fourth is a lithograph version, and the fifth version is the most mysterious. Many people believe that it is actually the first version of the Scream, as it's incomplete and lacks a lot of the colors and details of later versions. Interestingly enough, the gold bracelet isn't found in all 5 versions. But in the most famous version, the 1893 version, it's prominent, colorful, and once you notice it, you can't unsee it. It's such an eye-catching detail, and yet very little, if anything, has been written or discussed about this. You have to remember, these works of art have been discussed for over 100 years. Every color, every detail, every stroke and choice the artist made, analyzed and discussed. Not only that, these pieces have been recreated for just as long, and no one ever really seems to notice this bracelet. Even the modern-day exacted detail parodies somehow still completely miss this eye-catching golden bracelet. Very interesting indeed. So what do you think about all this? Is this just a detail seemingly everyone overlooked? Or is this the Mandela Effect? Let me hear your thoughts below. Recently on the television show Wheel of Fortune, a contestant had to solve a puzzle for a song lyric. Sweet dreams are made of blank. The contestant got it wrong and lost a potential $4,000 extra in winnings, but luckily went on to still win the episode. What was his answer? He said, "Sweet dreams are made of these." The correct answer is apparently sweet dreams are made of this. The lyrics come from a famous 1983 Eurythmics song titled Sweet Dreams. This caused a ton of confusion online, leading to multiple articles being written about not just this contestant losing, but also about how this lyric has been misheard for decades. That detail right there is what really interests me. The articles written didn't solely exist to make fun of the guy for saying the obviously wrong word in the puzzle. It's that even the writers of the article thought it was, "Sweet dreams are made of these." Once I read a few of these articles, I couldn't stop researching this. How is it that so many people could have misheard this song lyric for so many years? And it begs the question, is it really as simple as everyone is misremembering the lyrics? Or is this a Mandela effect? I'm curious to hear what you all remember. In the song by the Eurythmics, the way this is said is extremely exaggerated. So perhaps that exaggeration is the cause of all this confusion. But I read multiple comments of people saying that these sounds better than this, especially with the flow of the song and the rhyming of the song. So what do you think about this? One of these articles that I read, the top comment underneath it was, "Sweet dreams are made of this? I was today years old when I learned that these isn't the correct lyric." One last detail I bring up about this is the Marilyn Manson cover of this song, where the debate continues to rage. So I gave the song a listen with headphones on, and it does sound like these, but the lyrics for it say this. It's just weird. Is this all misremembering or mishearing, or has something actually changed? To kick this video off, let's talk about the classic painting, American Gothic, by Grant Wood. This was created in 1930 and has been replicated, recreated, and emulated in other forms of art numerous times because it's such an iconic piece. It's an older couple, a farmer and wife, standing in front of their farmhouse. The man is holding a pitchfork, and both of them look very weary and tired. Many say that this painting really captured this moment in time in Iowa. So what's the Mandela Effect? Well, that couple in the painting, it isn't a husband and wife. It's actually a farmer and his blonde-haired daughter. That's right, not husband and wife. It's actually a farmer and his blonde-haired daughter. But a ton of people online are really confused about this because they believe it was an older couple. When this painting was created, Grant Wood actually used his sister as a model for the daughter in the painting. So this being the farmer's blonde-haired daughter has seemingly always been the case. But then why do so many people remember an older woman? Some online have speculated that the painting must have been changed or altered, but there is currently no evidence that any change has ever been made to this. When it first appeared in the Cedar Rapids Gazette, a local newspaper, real Iowa farmers and wives were mad. They believed it to be a nasty caricature of Midwestern farmers, believing American Gothic made these farmers out to be pinched, grim-faced, puritanical Bible thumpers. That's not all. In fact, one wife of an Iowan farmer told Grant Wood that he should have his head bashed in for the piece. Apparently the farmers and their wives were not a fan of this piece, which is hilarious because nowadays it's revered as this beautiful piece of this time and place. But actually the people that lived in that time and place thought it was pretty awful. In fact, Grant tried to defend himself as a loyal Iowan by insisting that the people in American Gothic aren't intended to be farmers, but rather small town folk. Not Iowans, but generic Americans. Absolutely hilarious. Frosty the Snowman is a childhood classic to many in the United States. He was a snowman brought to life through magic in a 1950 recording, but became a household name in his 1969 animated film debut. Frosty the Snowman is a memorable character, and if you ask most people, they can describe every detail about him. But miraculously, Frosty is now missing something. So here's what I'd like you to do. Visualize all of the accessories and clothing articles on Frosty the Snowman. Now what do you see? Let's see what we've got. We have a button nose, we have two eyes made out of coal, and here is the Mandela Effect. Which of these items did he never adorn in the 1969 film? An old silk hat? A corncob pipe? A red scarf? A broom? Frosty the Snowman has an old silk hat, a broom, and a corncob pipe, but has surprisingly never worn a red scarf. Do you remember a red scarf? For some reason, dozens of people online seem to remember Frosty the Snowman wearing a scarf, and most remember it being red. So where did it go? Why do so many people remember this detail that now seemingly doesn't exist? It's really interesting. Even some modern-day Frosty the Snowman publications and media today show him wearing a red scarf. If you compare the past and the present, at some point some artist said, "Oh yeah, of course he has a red scarf," and drew Frosty with a red scarf. Does this prove he used to have a scarf, and that the past has been altered in some slight way? Or is this just a massive case of misremembering an iconic childhood character? I'll leave that for all of you to argue over in the comments below. Oh, and before I leave this topic, check out this funny little detail. Look at what the kids are wearing in Frosty the Snowman. You see anything wrong with this image? Did the creative behind these illustrations grow up in a place without snow? Do they not realize it's cold? These kids are wearing shorts in a blizzard. Anyway. I'd like to assume that everyone in the US knows of the Energizer Bunny. The pink bunny mascot with a drum powered by Energizer batteries that keep going and going. This thing has been around for decades, and that's the Battery Bunny. Always has been, always will be. But what if I told you that the Energizer Bunny isn't actually the only Battery Bunny? That Duracell, Energizer's main competitor, actually has a pink bunny powered by a battery mascot as well. And get this, that bunny was created first and has been around longer than Energizer's bunny. When I first read about this, my jaw dropped. I started digging deeper into this, and it's all true. And a lot of people online are freaking out about it. Apparently Duracell created their pink bunny first in 1973, but by 1988 their trademark lapsed, So Energizer swooped in and created a parody of that pink bunny. This led to legal issues, courtroom drama, and eventually, in a settlement, Energizer got the rights to this bunny in the US and Canada, while Duracell got their rights to everywhere else in the world. Then, get this, apparently Duracell's pink bunny started creeping back into the US in 2016. More courtroom drama ensued, and now we randomly have 2 battery companies with a pink bunny mascot. What? Okay, why not? Why not? So what do you remember? Did Duracell always have a pink bunny mascot? Or is this completely new information to you? I've seen a ton of people online completely confused about this, and a few people who remember the bunny. So where do you stand? One could certainly try to make the case that the Duracell bunny wasn't around very long in the US, so maybe that's why so many people don't remember it. But then again, the pink Duracell bunny was used in the US for a total of 23 years. 23 years! That is a ridiculously long time to be used in marketing for how little brand recognition there actually is for it. I don't know about you, but I find this potential Mandela Effect absolutely fascinating. So please, tell me what you remember. I want to hear it in the comments below. Let's talk about Around the World in 80 Days. This famous novel, released in 1872 by Jules Verne, captured the minds of readers the world over. At that time, the idea of traveling across the entire world for most was a near impossibility. But given our modern technology, today, the prospect of circumnavigating the globe is no more difficult than surviving 40 hours in a plane. Times have greatly changed. The feat was first accomplished in 1522 by Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan. But the sad reality of his journey was that of the 260 original crewmen, only 18 survived the journey, and it took them 3 years. All of this backstory to reiterate how exciting and thrilling Around the World in 80 Days was. This novel is still read by American students to this day. Due to this Mandela Effect should hit a lot of people. So quickly imagine what the characters traveled in this novel. Have you come up with an answer yet? Here is my question. Did the characters of Around the World in 80 Days ever fly in a hot air balloon? Yes or no? In this novel, the main character and his companions used a transcontinental train, a ferry, a steamboat, and even an elephant. But surprisingly enough, they never once used a hot air balloon. Is that what you recall? If you remember a hot air balloon, you aren't alone. This Mandela Effect is really confusing because there exist variations of cover art for this book with hot air balloons on them. And it's not just one book, there are dozens of examples of this. Now, this doesn't make any sense considering they never used a hot air balloon. Strangely enough, the hypothetical idea of using a hot air balloon is brought up in the novel, but it's quickly shot down. So what gives? Why in the 1956 film adaptation did they use a hot air balloon? Is it all simply creative liberties, or was the hot air balloon at one point in time used as transportation in Around the World in 80 Days? As always, let me know what you remember and what you believe in the comments below. Here's a fun Bible Mandela Effect that I've seen quite a few people online getting confused about. What is the name of the God in the Christian Bible's Old Testament? According to this supposed change, it isn't what you think. The verse in question comes from the Old Testament book of Exodus, chapter 34, verse 14. Finish this quote if you know it. Do not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is blank, is a jealous God. Some of you might think it's God, or Yahweh, or some other variation of the biblical God's name. But you'd be wrong. The name that has tons of people confused and arguing over is jealous. The God of the Bible's name is now apparently jealous. How about that? The full verse goes, do not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. So digging deeper, I looked into other translations to see if it was a mistranslation, and nope, all of them say something similar. The oldest version that I could find, the King James Version, says, for thou shalt worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. It's pretty weird. Either jealous was always his name and nobody really noticed it, or something changed. So let's go deeper and older. I went all the way back to the Torah, which is the Jewish holy text. Now the Torah is the first 5 books of the Christian Old Testament, so let's see what it says. When translated to English, it reads, for you shall not prostrate yourself before another God, because the Lord, whose name is Jealous One, is a jealous God. One last interesting thing before we move on. If you look up names of God in Christianity on Wikipedia and look at the edits, you can see that jealous was not always on this page. In fact, it was added December 21st, 2017. So what do you think about this? I don't have an opinion on this either way, but I find the confusion and the debate to be pretty interesting. So anyone out there that is religious in this way, Do you remember jealous being your god's name? Let me hear it in the comments below. Well, what about the former science fiction turned science fact concept of video phones? You know, it's a phone call, but you can see the other person on the other side of the phone. Now we have FaceTime, Skype, and other similar apps, but for the longest time, this was the future. I used to think, oh man, when this is real, we'll know we've made it, because we're living in the future. But now that we have it, no one really wants to do it, because who wants to get showered and cleaned up for a phone call? Just text me. In the 1960s, Bell System, later renamed AT&T, showed off their picture phone as a prototype at the New York City World's Fair.
Good morning, John. You're looking well this morning. I'm very pleased and proud, John, to participate with you this morning in this historic call and city of Pittsburgh.
But that wasn't the first showing of this technology. Even though at the time, this was shown off as a brand new thing never before seen or realized. What if I told you that video phones existed, and not just in concept, but actually existed and were publicly used 87 years ago? Go ahead, take a moment to take that in. 87 years ago. Germany, 1936. The world's first two-way video phone service launched. This unbelievable historical achievement that seemingly spawned into existence was so far ahead of its time. Get this, it connected to a range of 100 miles to multiple cities in Germany and was open to the public. It ran at 25 frames per second on a CRT display at a resolution of 172 rows, which equated to about 40,000 pixels. It was said to be so detailed that you could read the hands on a wristwatch. 3-minute phone calls were priced at about 1/15 of the average German's weekly wage. Each city had a few booths, and all you had to do was make an appointment ahead of time at the post office. Then World War II came around, and their plans to extend the network were abandoned for obvious reasons. By 1940, the entire system was shut down. I want you to all think about the first navigational device made for traveling in cars. I know that was a very loaded statement, but follow me here. I don't mean opening a big physical map. I mean the first human-made technology of the modern era that we use to get around with in cars. Everyone knows what GPS is, right? Global Positioning System. It's a navigational system developed by the US Department of Defense in the 1970s. It calculates your exact location on Earth and helps you navigate around accurately. This technology became available for all citizens in 1995, and in 2000 it was no longer intentionally downgraded to the public. So everyone had access to the full version. That is, as far as we know, the truth, and that's the way the story has always gone. But now is where the Mandela Effect comes in. Apparently the first GPS device was created in 1932. That's right, 1932. There was a device called the Interauto, which is now the world's first personal navigation system for an automobile. This device had a scrolling map and connected to the car's speedometer to remain accurate. In fact, it's been compared to a modern-day Garmin or TomTom navigation device. It tracked your location in real time at an accurate speed as you drove along the road. Am I alone in thinking this is just unbelievable? It feels like an AI-created artificial history that's just too bizarre to believe. And yet apparently it's real, and it has always been real. Is this what you remember learning about? Has anyone ever heard of this before? And not only that, it gets weirder somehow. Doing the research for this, I found out that there was a wristwatch version that you could wear while driving that did about the same thing. This thing was called the Plus 4 Wristlet Route Finder. Wow, that's a mouthful. And it came out in 1927. 1927, before the Great Depression. This wrist navigational device used tiny little scrolls that can be switched in and out depending on what route was taken. I've joked about it many times over the course of this series, but I cannot wait to see what random thing gets retroactively invented next. I don't know, TV in the 1800s? Sure, why not? Next, let's talk about a much more modern type of art, the milk mustache. The Got Milk advertising campaign, which ran from 1993 to 2014, was created and used to encourage the consumption of milk in the United States of America. What started as simply an ad in California later was licensed by milk producers and dairy farmers all across America, all with the express goal of selling more milk. What was really strange about these ads were that they used numerous celebrities, musicians, and athletes to sell milk. And in each of them, they always had a milk mustache. Weird, right? What a strange time in American history. Although, as weird as it is in retrospect, I was a kid and a teen at the time, so I never really stopped to consider how strange any of this was. Anyway, let's talk about the Mandela Effect. A bunch of female famous rock musicians at the time did Got Milk ads, people like Kelly Clarkson and Miley Cyrus, but the weirdest one is the one that apparently no one can find today, and that is the Got Milk ad with Avril Lavigne, the pop-punk singer and songwriter that tons of people remember, myself included, but apparently has never existed. The limited details that people have recalled is that she had a white cotton tank top on, apparently suspenders, and that her guitar was in the photo. But that's about it. Go ask anyone who was alive during that time if they remember her doing a Got Milk ad, and more than likely, they will say they remember it. But as far as we can tell, it doesn't exist, and apparently never did. Here's the crazy thing. The Got Milk ads had reached a 90% awareness in America, which is phenomenally successful, meaning 9 out of 10 people had heard of or at least seen one of these Got Milk ads. So the chance of someone seeing one of these ads over the 20 plus years they were made is extremely high. That's what makes this specific Mandela Effect so interesting. We have a list of everyone that did one of these ads, and Avril Lavigne isn't one of them. So why do so many of us remember her in one of these ads? People have gone through the backlogs of these Got Milk ads, and there's nothing even similar to what we're describing. I wish I had the answers, but I don't. Either it existed, and somehow all evidence of it has been deleted or lost, or she never actually had a Got Milk ad, and all of us are somehow simply misremembering the exact same thing. So what do you think? Let me hear it in the comments below. The massive ancient pyramids of Egypt, some of the greatest wonders left in the world, known worldwide for their vast size, striking design, intricate construction, immense complexity, and overall wonder. The pyramids of Giza have inspired countless minds. When one thinks of the Great Pyramids, what else comes to mind? Ancient gods, pharaohs, hieroglyphics, and especially mummies. As mainstream Egyptologists and archaeologists understand the pyramids now, they claim that the pyramids were massive tombs to house great pharaohs after death. But what if I were to tell you that within the Great Pyramids of the Giza Pyramid Complex, no mummies or mummified pharaohs have ever been found? That's right, not a single ancient body has ever been discovered inside the pyramids. In fact, all of the mummies, sarcophagi, and pharaohs ever discovered have been found in locations near the pyramids, but never inside them. Places such as the Valley of the Kings, hidden royal tombs, and cemeteries located all around the pyramids. The belief that pyramids were tombs are largely based on speculation with no hard evidence or bodies to support that claim. For example, one of the most well-known pharaohs was the young Tutankhamun, also known as King Tut. Where was his sarcophagus discovered? In the Valley of the Kings. In fact, I actually covered another Mandela Effect regarding King Tut in my Halloween Mandela Effects video, link in the description if you want to check that out. So what about Tutankhamun's father, Akhenaten? Where was he buried? Well, which archaeological site he's buried in is still debated to this day, but it's either the royal tomb of Akhenaten in Amarna or the Valley of the Kings. Well, what about Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great, or Osmandius in Greek? Where was he buried? The East, Valley of the Kings. What about Amenhotep III, also known as Amenhotep the Magnificent? Well, you guessed it, the Valley of the Kings, this time in the Western Valley. So many famous pharaohs, and not a single one of them were ever laid to rest in the Great Pyramids of Giza. I find that not just fascinating, but absolutely astonishing. Not a single body, not a single mummy, not a single pharaoh, nothing. So what do you remember learning? Were mummified pharaohs and sarcophagi laid to rest in the Great Pyramids, or were they always empty? Is this another case of the Mandela Effect, or is this something else entirely? What do you think? Has history changed before our very eyes, or is this exactly what you remember? Here is a mind-blowing Mandela Effect that is confusing and disturbing everyone. It's the phrase, the bucket list. A widely known phrase that refers to a list of things someone wants to do before they die. Maybe on your bucket list you have skydiving, or getting married, or traveling around the world. It's a super common phrase that has been around for a long time, but what if it hasn't? When do you think the phrase, the bucket list, was first used? Just blurt out a time period. Was it the 1930s, the 40s, the 70s? It seems like everyone has a different opinion, but all the opinions are that this phrase has existed for quite a while. But it turns out this phrase didn't exist in the public eye until 2007, with the release of the movie The Bucket List starring Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman. Did this phrase simply come into existence with the release of that movie, and now its simple origin has been long forgotten? Or was this phrase always around? I want to hear your memories and thoughts on this. I personally feel crazy because I made one of these lists years and years ago. Not only that, I used to work at Blockbuster back then during this time period. I can visualize it in my mind. I remember stacking DVDs of The Bucket List on a side shelf. Apparently, the screenwriter for this movie, Justin Zackham, had an idea for a list of things to do before I kick the bucket back in 1999 and decided to shorten it to The Bucket List. This idea went on to become the plot of his 2007 movie script, The Bucket List. People have been digging for evidence that this phrase existed before 2007, and nothing has been found. Nothing. In fact, Justin Zackham said in an interview, the film's release brought the phrase into common parlance. And as a testament to how natural and idiomatic it sounds, many people assume that the term must have long predated the movie. So even Justin Zackham, the writer of The Bucket List, believes that he created the term bucket list and that it didn't exist beforehand. So what do you believe? Is he correct? Did he come up with this phrase, or did it exist previous to that? Was the bucket list always a phrase? This one honestly has me scratching my head. I could have sworn this existed before that movie, but maybe we're all just wrong. Or maybe this is a Mandela Effect. Another fun detail I caught on to while doing research for this particular segment, the term catfishing, as in someone who pretends to be someone that they're not on social media. Turns out that did not exist prior to the 2010 documentary Catfish. It simply didn't exist in that context until then. I'm not saying that's a Mandela Effect, but I found it pretty interesting and I thought you would too. So let me hear all your thoughts on this in the comments below. Remember the movie Spider-Man 2, where Spider-Man stops a train from derailing and crashing using every ounce of strength in his body? All of this happened after an incredible battle with Doc Ock. Spider-Man was exhausted, beaten down, and completely worn out, but he gave it his all and he saved the people on that train. Then those same people saved the collapsing Spider-Man. The people that saved him slowly pulled him inside to safety. They all carried him above their heads and then laid him down. Someone saying, "Careful, he's a hero." Someone else chimes in, "He's just a kid, no older than my son." It's an amazing moment where Spider-Man wakes up to everyone staring at him. He realizes his mask is gone, and everyone knows what his face looks like, but everyone promises to keep it a secret. It's just, chef's kiss. That's a superhero moment right there. This is what makes those kinds of movies so good. So besides reminiscing about this incredible movie, something I just said didn't actually happen, and that's the new Mandela Effect I'm discussing today. Despite what a lot of people remember, myself included, the line, "Careful, he's a hero," was never said in Spider-Man 2. It simply doesn't exist. The line where someone says, "Careful, he's a hero," is now replaced with, "Nice and easy, mumble, mumble, slower, gently." It's actually really strange sounding compared to the rest of the dialogue during the scene. It sounds like dialogue added after the fact in post-production. Like the original line was removed and replaced with this, whatever this mumbly line is.
Nice and easy to go down. Slower, gently.
I had to remove the music and background noise just to hear what the current line actually is. Listen for yourself.
Nice and easy to go down. Slower, gently.
It's something like "nice and easy when you go down," or "nice and easily you go down." You can barely understand it, and that's not what I remember. I even looked up the script, and none of the dialogue is in it. It just vaguely describes what happens. I got really into this mystery when I first heard of it because I can quote most of this movie. That's how much I've watched Spider-Man 2. So I started digging. It's not in Spider-Man 2. It's not in the slightly longer version of Spider-Man 2.1 or Spider-Man 3. So what happened to this line? Eventually I found something on a website that catalogs memes. One of those memes is this, "Carefully, he's a hero." This meme started around 2017 while the original movie came out in 2004. Now, here's the weird thing. I've never seen these memes before, but the line is near identical to what I remember. Mine being, "Careful, he's a hero," and the meme being, "Carefully, he's a hero." The fact we both came to a near identical remembrance of this line is pretty stunning, meaning either it's a complete coincidence, as in both of our minds came to the same false memory, or maybe it was a line in one version of Spider-Man 2 that doesn't exist anymore and can't be found, or it's a Mandela Effect of something that used to exist that a bunch of people remember, but doesn't anymore. Stuff like this just makes me scratch my head. What do you remember? Does this line sound familiar to you? Have you ever seen these memes before? Let me know what you remember. Let's talk about the extremely popular Amazon series based on a comic book called The Boys. Put simply, imagine if superheroes were real and existed in our world. Think about how commercialized, corrupt, and terrifying that would be. People with superpowers doing whatever they wanted, it's a recipe for disaster, but it makes for a fantastically entertaining show. The Boys themselves are a series of regular people trying to take down these awful superheroes from the shadows. When you think about groups like the Avengers or the Justice League, in this universe, the Boys universe, it's called the Seven. There's a Batman knockoff, an Aquaman knockoff, a Wonder Woman knockoff. You get the point. I explain all this to set up today's Mandela Effect, which has to do with the Sevens version of Superman, Homelander. Homelander is if Superman was draped in an American flag, but born in a lab and deeply violent, angry, and mentally ill. He had a handler named Madeline Stillwell. She was just a human, but was very powerful because she knew how to control these soups. What they liked, what they didn't like, what they were afraid of, and yes, what they were into. The relationship between her and Homelander was very questionable, to say the least. Where she would, how do I put this? Breastfeed Homelander. Yeah, a full-grown man. This was an ongoing thing across multiple seasons, where Homelander's obvious Oedipus complex and mommy issues were on full display. If you've watched the show, you know how crazy it gets. But what if I was to tell you that Homelander was never actually breastfed? Not once in the show. Not a single time in all of the seasons of The Boys. You'd probably say I'm lying or making this up, but as it goes now, this is actually the case. In the scenes where so many people seem to remember this happening, Madeline Stillwell is actually feeding him milk off of her fingers. Past a certain point in the story, in later seasons, he's drinking milk from a milk bottle or getting milk from a literal cow. But as for the breastfeeding, it never happened. Not once. Now this has led to crazy speculation and confusion online. Was it edited out? The answer is no. People have gone back and checked pirated streams of those first episodes right when they came out, and guess what? There's no changes to the content in those episodes. This reminds me of the Stranger Things Mandela Effect, where scenes just disappeared. No one knows what happened to them. Link to that in the description if you want to check that out. So besides the memories of the many people online who remember, what evidence is there that these scenes actually existed? Let's take a look. First off, there are tons of comments from all over the internet of people remembering these scenes. To them, it happened. Apparently, we all misremembered these scenes. Next up is a website that I found, which calls it a breastfeeding scene 4 times in the article. I guess the writer of that article misremembered as well. Then you have another website that talks about the 5 creepiest scenes of Homelander drinking milk, and guess what came in at number 1? The scenes that don't exist now. The final one on their list mentions that you don't actually see any milk in this scene, because it's a breastfeeding scene. Huh. I find that pretty weird considering that's what so many people remember, but that isn't actually what happened in that episode. That never happened. What's even crazier is that this article used an image which shows the exact opposite of the text underneath it. Nothing is exposed, it's just Madeline Stillwell with milk on her fingers. It's amazing to me that so many people got this wrong apparently, including a top 10 list with descriptions and images of the episode showing the exact opposite. It's really weird. So what do you remember? Update. I can't believe this. I researched, wrote, recorded, and edited this entire Boys segment, ready to put it out there, and then this happened. Season 4, Episode 6 of The Boys released, and in it, Homelander finally does what he's never done before. He was breastfed. What unbelievable timing. I'm so glad I didn't put this video out before that came out. So here's the details. Homelander was just breastfed by a new character this season called Firecracker. You can't make this stuff up. I was literally about to release this video, and then this happens. So it turns out that the Mandela Effect that Homelander was never breastfed was true, up until this episode was released. And to be fair, what the Mandela Effect was that Madeline Stillwell was the one who breastfed Homelander at some point, and that still never happened. But now someone else jumped in and made it a reality for our insane Superman knockoff. The Mandela Effect is truly amazing. I mean, what a crazy twist. What are the odds? Let's talk about one of the most acclaimed video games of all time, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64 console, released all the way back in 1998. In this game, there is a location called the Fishing Pond in Lake Hylia, where you, playing as Link, can relax and fish to your heart's content. The pond owner allows you in, sells you bait, and lets you go wild. Now, there is a legendary fish in this pond that has been discussed, debated, and searched for as long as people could comment about it online. This is the Hylian loach, the rarest and most sought-after fish in the game. Not only is it hard to find, it's even tougher to catch. So what is the Mandela Effect regarding the Hylian loach? Well, it turns out that the Hylian loach doesn't exist in Ocarina of Time anymore. Or at least its name doesn't. What so many people remember as the Hylian loach is now called the Hyrule loach. And I could understand some people never having heard of this before saying, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you spent hours of your youth in that pond fishing for this legendary beast, you know this feels weird and wrong. And if you look up Hylian loach online, you'll come across numerous guides, game fact pages, and forum posts from back in the day. Comparatively, there are significantly more search results for the Hylian loach than there are for the Hyrule loach. So is this simply a case of the majority of people online misremembering this legendary fish's name? Or has something changed? Let's dive deep into this topic. Let's check out the official Nintendo Power Player's Guide for The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I'm sure this strategy guide from 1998 will surely solve our mystery. On page 56 and 57, we have an entire spread about Lake Hylia, not Lake Hyrule. So does it mention the Loach? Oh yeah. Unfortunately though, it only says this: with the help of a special lure, Link caught the Loach, the largest fish the pond has to offer. Meaning this strategy guide mentions the word Loach, but not the name that so many people are arguing over. I mean, that's just hilarious. So then I found another strategy guide, an unofficial guide from 1998 by Bradley Games. And it mentions a huge fish called the Loach, but again, no exact name. Incredible. So let's investigate further. It turns out that the Hylian Loach does appear in another Zelda game, the 2006 Nintendo Wii and Nintendo GameCube versions of The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. In this title, the fish is still sporting the name that so many of us remember, the Hylian Loach. In fact, there's even a book in this game, with a joke as a title, called The Legend of the Hylian Loach: Twilight Fish. It's almost like this game is aware of the mystery. Now you might be thinking, okay, these are different fish, who cares? Maybe everyone just got it wrong. But then there is a picture in Twilight Princess of the pond owner from Ocarina of Time holding a Hylian Loach. I mean, that's as direct a connection to one another as you could make. So let's look at the timeline here. 1998, it's a Hylian Loach, or at least people think it is. It's now apparently a Hyrule Loach. Next up is 2006. It's now a Hylian Loach. So is there any other evidence or residue that it was once called a Hylian Loach before 2006? Because right now it's all based off of memories, a photo in Twilight Princess, and a bunch of online posts, comments, and videos. Upon doing even more research on this stupid fish, I found something really fascinating. I learned that it was mentioned in another of Nintendo's video games. This game is Animal Crossing for the Nintendo GameCube, that was released in 2002. Now, Animal Crossing is one of the most fun and relaxing games ever. Among the many things that you could do in that title, one of those is fish. And if you were lucky enough, you could even catch a Loach. Now in that game, it was simply called a Loach. But if you did catch one, you'd receive text on screen that read, "I caught a Loach. You don't suppose it's Hylian, do you?" And there it is, another Nintendo game making a direct reference to The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time's rare fish and legendary catch. The timing lines up, and the joke only works if everyone thinks that fish is indeed called a Hylian Loach. That's right, this text was written after Ocarina of Time, but before Twilight Princess. It is the perfect piece of evidence that at least the localizers and writers at Nintendo of America, the people writing and publishing this game, believe the fish was called a Hylian Loach, a name that now doesn't make any sense if there wasn't a Hylian Loach until 2006 with Twilight Princess. Why would they make a joke about a Hylian Loach if it was never actually called that? Just think about this for a second. There was a fish name in 1998. In 2002 they referenced the fish name, and in 2006 is actually the first time it was ever used now. Why would there be references and jokes to the name that never existed if it didn't exist? In fact, after seeing all this information, I'd argue that the Hylian Loach in Twilight Princess was named that because of the original and now seemingly changed name that never existed. This change is the perfect example of a Mandela Effect and the weird ripple effect it creates. The original name in the original game was seemingly and miraculously changed, but its effects and lasting impacts weren't. I'm finally covering it. I've seen so many comments requesting it for so long. Let's talk about the missing emojis. Emoji are defined as small digital image or icons used to express an idea, emotion, etc. Essentially, it's a quick way to express an emotion, feeling, or desire. Emojis have been tracked and logged with every single new update, so it isn't possible that these apparent missing emojis did exist and then were removed, because there would be evidence for this. And yet, here we are. There are numerous emojis that have seemingly never existed, but tons of people remember them. Each emoji has a specific Unicode number. That number never changes, and even though emojis can look artistically different on different platforms and apps, all emojis use the same Unicode. You can't make them disappear, let alone without a trace of evidence left behind. The submission process for a new emoji is ridiculously detailed and complex, and the very few that do get chosen go through huge amounts of scrutiny and revision before being accepted. Here's an interesting fact I learned while researching this. To be a member on the Unicode voting board that selects new emojis, it runs you about $21,000. Not only that, certain emojis are banned in some countries and are slightly altered in others. But as far as I can find, the missing emojis that we are talking about they're not part of those changes. Also, I'd like to reiterate, this isn't 2 or 3 people being affected by this. All of these Mandela effects affect substantial groups of people. Now that we've gotten all of that stuff out of the way, let's talk about some of the missing ones that people remember but don't exist, and never have apparently. First up, we have the robber or burglar emoji, that as of now, doesn't exist and never has. These are renditions of what people remember that you're seeing on screen right now, but what you might remember may vary slightly. The robber or burglar emoji had a male and a female version, as well as a full-body black and white striped person carrying a huge bag of presumably stolen goods or money running to the left. Do you remember any of these? And if you do, how do you remember them if they never existed? It's so weird. Another missing emoji is the hiker holding a walking stick. Tons of people remember using this to represent accomplishing a task, or overcoming something very challenging in their life, or to quite literally represent mountain climbing. But as of now, it doesn't and hasn't ever existed. Here's another missing in action emoji, the seahorse. It simply doesn't exist. The water bottle? Nope. Peas in a pod? Seemingly never existed. A very pointy swordfish? Even the fish is now gone. So tell me, do you remember any of these now non-existent emoji? Is this a Mandela effect for you, or is this just tons of people misremembering something that never existed? Also, can you think of any other missing emoji that I didn't mention or maybe I haven't heard of before? As always, tell me everything you know in the comments below.